Ever heard of a Puree diet? It's the level 4 dysphagia diet, and it needs special attention to prepare it just right and still make it enjoyable. Let's get to learning how. Hello all, Jennifer here. Today we are cracking the code on the level 4 Puree diet. In this video, I will talk about what Puree Textures are all about and how to prepare them. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe by clicking the little red button down below this video. This final video is part 4 of the dysphagia diet series. So let's talk about the level 4 Puree diet. This diet texture definitely stands out from the rest because it requires no biting or chewing. Pureed foods really only need the tongue to move the food forward and back, and eventually bringing it to the back of the mouth for swallowing. Let me first start by going over some considerations for you caregivers that have to prepare this type of diet at home. First, since puree foods only need tongue movement before swallowing, it is important that the foods you prepare are not too sticky, because this can cause the food to stick to places in your mouth, the cheeks, the teeth, roof of the mouth, and you might even find that it can stick in the back of the throat. As we've learned, we know that this can lead to your loved one choking or coughing on the food later on. So puree foods are best eaten with a spoon, obviously, and the foods should hold their shape when you scoop the food onto the spoon, but it should also fall off rather easily when the spoon is tilted. And finally, puree foods should not contain lumps or small pieces of food, since these can also get lodged in the mouth or the throat. You'll find that this becomes even more of a problem as your loved one develops increased sensitivity to textures. So you're going to find that this causes them to either resist the food altogether, or they're going to spit the small pieces of food out on the table or the floor. If it's just you and your loved one at home by yourself, this probably won't make too big of a difference, but it's definitely not a behavior you want to see if you're going out to a restaurant or if you have friends or family over to visit. As far as foods to avoid, you're going to follow the same list as the level 5 minced and moist foods. You can click the link above to learn more about that, or check out the attachment in the description section below. So let's talk about the prep work. The puree diet, as I'm sure you're aware, is going to require the most prep work, since all the foods will have to be blended to a smooth texture. So when you're beginning any of these when you're beginning the process, you want to start by focusing first on your ingredients. So if possible, you want to opt for smooth ingredients over those with chunky additives. So this can be things like using creamy peanut butter versus crunchy peanut butter, or plain, maybe vanilla yogurt instead of yogurt that might have small pieces of fruit in them. For meats and veggies and fruits, you want to prepare them first just like you would the level 5 minced and moist diet. Because if you start with the smaller ground textures, it's going to make the foods easier to blend. So when you're ready to start pureeing the food, you can use either a food processor, a kitchen blender, or an immersion blender. I personally have found that a high-quality food processor is usually the best tool for creating the perfect texture and consistency for things like meats and veggies, while an immersion blender, one of the handheld blenders, works awesome for soups. Also, because pureeing foods can take a little bit of time, keep in mind that they freeze well. So if you make more in advance, you can store it in the freezer to use later. I will attach links for each type of these tools, these appliances, in the description section, just in case you need to get one. So let's move on to the texture of the food. To get the right texture, you want to steer clear of foods that are too watery, and you want to drain excess liquid off of the foods before you start pureeing it. If the food is too dry or sticky after it is pureed, you can try adding small amounts of flavorful liquids like broth, gravy, juice, or milk until the texture becomes a little bit thinner. If possible, you want to try to avoid using water to thin the food, because this will obviously make the food taste bland and watered down. If you puree a food that becomes too thin, then you want to try to add a thickening agent. I usually recommend potato flakes or baby cereal, but you want to be sure that if you use either one of them, to mix it first with hot water before adding it into your pureed foods. And finally, the flavor. This is super important for pureed foods because a pureed meal with the perfect texture still won't be very appetizing if it doesn't taste good. But getting great flavor is usually pretty easy. You can add sugar, salt, great spices, anything to give it a little extra flavor. Also, when you add gravy and broth and sauces, those are going to boost the flavor also. And you can also use honey and jelly if you want to sweeten otherwise maybe bland tasting fruits or desserts. With pureed foods, you can also increase the calories of the meals that you prepared by adding protein powder or even Greek yogurt. So these also will improve the taste, but it's also going to add extra nutrients to the food that you're serving. Oh, and caregivers, one last important note. Don't forget to test it out. You're the chef now, so if you wouldn't eat the food that you make, your loved one probably isn't going to want to either. Well, there you have it. The Level 4 Puree Diet. It's the final diet type for your loved one that's going to need any type of modifications to make their mealtime safer and easier. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this very helpful. Now, if you have prepared pureed foods before, please tell me about your experience in the comments section below. I would love to hear your story. Until next time, good luck cracking the code.